Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. It's a beautiful September evening here, and I am sitting in the front yard of my Portland, Oregon permaculture food forest garden. We are in zone 8B here, and it is the end of the dry season. So everything is very, very dry. The days are still quite warm. The evenings are starting to get cool, and in a few weeks, the rain will return. I hope, fingers crossed. We're all really anticipating the return of rainy, gray, cold weather and short days. I got a question the other week, and actually I've had this question in my DMs a fair amount and in emails a fair amount, which is, I've just bought land. I want to do permaculture. Where do I start? I've been practicing permaculture for more than 20 years, on this property for 14 years. And so I have a fair amount of experience with beginning in permaculture. We've done permaculture in an apartment, a second floor balcony garden. I've done guerrilla gardening in inner city St. Louis. I have gardened in rural Oregon on a large garden. And here I have designed a permaculture food forest. There's a rain garden. There is a U-shaped orchard in the backyard. There's an annual veggie garden built into a sun trap. And we keep ducks and bees and chickens and turkeys. I also raise my 4 kids here as well. We are on 1/4 acre. The beautiful thing about permaculture is that it is site specific. You can take the concepts I'm about to talk about, the questions I'm about to posit, and you can apply them to any size garden. So when I say, folks are asking me like, I've got land, folks might ask, I have a similar size property to yours, 1/2 acre or 1/4 acre, or a city lot. Or they might say, I have 10 acres, or I just bought 180 acres. What do I do? Where do I begin my permaculture design journey? So let's talk about 5 things you can think about as you begin your permaculture journey. Before we get into those, I just want to say that I believe very strongly that permaculture is something that you can learn on your own. If you want to take a PDC, that's great. I have some thoughts and criticisms. I've gotten a lot of feedback about that, about PDCs. Why they weren't right for me, that's Permaculture Design Certificate course. Everything you need to know to do permaculture, you can source on your own, either from the library or from YouTube channels like mine or blogs like mine. You can source it all for free. You don't have to pay a lot of money to do permaculture. And actually, one of the permaculture principles I gravitate to most strongly is the slow, small solutions. So you can begin to design your permaculture system as you are acquiring more permaculture knowledge, as you are building your skill set, as you are building that mental library about permaculture. You can go ahead and start designing, because we work slow and small. And therefore, when we don't know a lot yet, when we don't have an intimate relationship with the land that we're on yet, we aren't making huge impactful changes that are big screw ups we have to come back and fix later. We're making small changes. We're feeling things out as we go. And so don't feel that you have to be an expert before you can dive in. Don't feel that the changes you make have to be really big. They shouldn't be. Slow, small solutions. You should be able to teach yourself everything you need to know. Okay, so let's assume that you're familiar with the 12 principles of permaculture and the 3 ethics. But the reason you are asking the question, where do I start with my permaculture design, is because you're familiar with and invested in permaculture in the first place. Let me share the 5 things I would think about and do think about when I approach a new plot of land. Think, I want to do permaculture here. Where do I start? Number 1, use the permaculture principle, observe and interact. I cannot stress enough how important this principle is when you are new to a site. The more you observe, the more you learn the patterns of your landscape, the more you learn what is happening, the better you can design. The more intimately connected you become with the land, the more effective your design is, because you will know the needs and the deficits and the strengths of the property that you're on. Observe, observe, observe. Go out at different times of day, different seasons of the year. Just sit and watch with a notebook if you want. Observe where the wind is blowing, the water is flowing, where the wildlife is moving through your property, where the sunshine is at different times of day. Observe those microclimates. The more data you can collect, the more observations you can make, the better your design will be in the long run. So observe, 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 observe some more, and then think about interacting a little bit. 2, assess your needs. You've spent time observing and interacting with the system, assessing its needs, what it brings to the table, what you can do to benefit it. But what are your needs? What are the needs of your household? Are you wanting to create habitat for wildlife, reduce your carbon footprint, cool your landscape with greenery and shade? Are you wanting to produce your own food, like these pawpaws here? Are you wanting to restore an area? What are your goals? What do you want out of the system? In permaculture, one of the principles is obtain a yield. What yield are you wanting out of your site? One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they plan a permaculture design based on some other permaculture designer's notion or something they read in a book or saw in a PDC. And that design doesn't actually meet their needs. They're growing food that they don't enjoy eating. They are having a site that requires far too much maintenance for them. It's not about what other people think your site should be like. It's about your connection to your land, how you two are going to have a relationship, right? And so you need to know your own needs. Much like when you have a relationship with a human partner, you need to know your own self and your own needs and what you want out of that relationship. It's no different with your land. Number 3 is set a budget. This budget can change and fluctuate. You can have long-ranging goals. You can set your budget for this year. You can set your dream budget. Do some number crunching. And I don't just mean financial budget, I mean time budget. How much time can you commit to the garden? How many life hours do you need to work to earn the money to pay for the things that you want to put in the garden versus how many things can you source using the hours in your day that don't cost any money? How much do you want to be out in the garden? How much can you commit? That will really help you shape your schedule of transitioning, of restoring, of regenerating your landscape. How much can I give? How much can I invest? That will set the timeline, both in terms of your budget and in terms of the hours that you're going to give. So important. Most folks I find overreach. They under budget how much money, how much time they're going to spend, and they have too lofty of a goal of what they want to get out of their system. Set realistic expectations for yourself and your life and your land, and you will set yourself up for success. 4 is create a site map. There's loads out there on how to do this. Now, I did it when we first got our house using colored pencils and measuring tape, and I went around the yard and created a site map. I need to do an updated one now, but a site map helps you not only know the actual dimensions of your land, and you can add topography if you want to. You can draw in where the water flows, where the predominant winds are, etc., etc. You can also add existing structures, existing trees, and then perhaps in a different color. If you want to use, there's tons and tons of free landscape programs now. You don't have to be a Luddite like me and use colored pencils, but that's how my brain works. You can draw in the plants that you want on your site map. Draw in the structures that you want. Where are you going to put your zones? Zones 0 through 5. You spent a lot of time doing the first thing on my list, observing and interacting. You've observed and observed and observed. That step of interaction includes building a site map. You now know what your land looks like, what the conditions are on it, and you can craft a really accurate map to help guide you as you go forward in your design. For me, I find it really helpful to not only have that view of walking the land, of sitting down on it and watching, but to have that bird's eye view of a site map. It helps me think in a different way. It helps me reframe what's happening in the landscape and helps me brainstorm better. The last thing I would say when you are starting out in your brand new permaculture design, create a succession plan. Permaculture means permanent agriculture and permanent culture. That does not mean that our design is static. In fact, nature is not that way. I talk a lot about how we are pushing toward dynamic equilibrium, where eventually we get these ebbs and flows that help boost productivity in our landscape. But when we're starting with a land that has been damaged in some way, and most of us are, there is that succession of plants, of other organisms, of fertility. And so the system is going to be changing over time. What is that going to look like for you? What are the pioneer species like? You can hear this black locust, well, purple rogue locust behind me rustling in the breeze. I'm taking her out this winter. She's done. It's always a propeller playing. She's done. She was a pioneer tree. She was a nurse tree for my pawpaws. They're now mature enough that they are going to become the canopy tree, and it's time for her to get cycled out. What is your plant succession plan? What is your succession plan for your livestock? You may have different livestock at the beginning. As your system matures, you may add in different livestock. Another really important thing to think about is as you've set your budget for your money and your time, think about the succession of events in your life as well. Are you going to start a family? Are your kids going to be maturing up and out of your household? Are you going to need to take on care for elderly relatives? Are you yourself, not a question, you are going to be aging and having reduced mobility and reduced ability to work in the garden over time? What is the succession plan for your system and for you as the permaculturist? What is it going to look like over time? And how are you going to plan appropriately? So I hope those 5 things were really helpful. For me, if I'm sitting down to a new plot of land, those are the first 5 things I'm going to tackle after I've already become well acquainted with what permaculture is. Those are my 5 launching off points, right? Those are the 5 things that are going to set me up to design an effective plan to help me be more successful in my permaculture and to enjoy it more, to feel like I am equipped with the things that help me build a really good system. If you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it, please check out my Patreon down below. I also have a Venmo and a PayPal. If you enjoy my content, you can always throw a couple of bucks at me and say, thanks, Angela. I support the work that you do and I value your expertise. I will be back very soon for my permaculture garden as we are creeping into fall little by little. I hope you are staying well and safe. Thanks.